Hello, and welcome to the show that helps you to manage your personal finances on the path to achieving financial well-being. Each episode will have news, in-depth interviews, and practical tips to help you manage and navigate the day-to-day challenges of the cost of living crisis, saving for the medium term, and caring for future you. I'm Charlie Goodman, and I'm joined by my co-host, Hiran Panchal. Hi, Hiran. Tell us what's on today's show.
Hi, Charlie. In today's episode, we have a news update from Will Robbins of CityWire. We also have Emma Waller, who will be interviewing financial well-being expert Justine Piercy, and we'll be wrapping up with some great financial well-being tips as usual. So, Charlie, shall we get on with the show?
Absolutely. Let's head over to Will Robbins for the personal finance news.
Here is the latest personal finance news in 3 minutes. The results of the Financial Times annual bonus survey are in. Surprising nobody, a good chunk of respondents expect their bonuses to be down this year. But what was interesting was what they want to spend their bonuses on. Childcare, remortgaging costs, and building cash buffers were the top priorities. There was a pervading sense of job insecurity in the article, as well as people feeling less well off due to rising cost of living. One person was quoted saying they'd increased borrowing to sustain their lifestyle. Well, others said they are no longer able to save, as a lower bonus has not been balanced by any pay rises. But another couple were relying on their bonuses to pay off their mortgage when the fixed rate ends. In all, 58% expected bonuses to be lower. And of that, 11% expected them to be substantially lower. A second from the FT related to home downsizing. Savills, the estate agent, calculated that someone with no mortgage moving from a 4-bed house valued at around £560,000, moving to an average 2-bed home would gain £305,000 in the downsize. The next sentence of the report might interest you, though. It says, quote, "A person aged 65 has a life expectancy of about 20 years, according to the ONS, meaning the proceeds would provide an income of around £1,200 a month for the rest of their life." Wonder what you make of that. People are increasingly looking at their main home as a way of supplementing their pension provision, said Lucian Cook, Residential Research Director at Savills, quoted in the piece. Talking about people approaching retirement, he said, "This generation was right at the front of growth in house prices. Increasingly, we're seeing more of them with no outstanding mortgage debt downsizing." And then finally, an opinion piece in the Mail caught my eye. Lee Boyce writes about stamp duty. He and his wife had their eyes on a home worth £700,000, but don't want to pay the £22,500 on stamp duty. And of course, mortgage rates have become so much higher now as well. So instead, he wants to build a shed office or shoffice. Quote, "At 10 foot by 9 foot, it's a great size and comes in at £11,000 of cost." He said the price includes full insulation and an electrician wiring it up with power, broadband and lighting, and will likely add to his own house price. Anyway, thank you very much. That was the news. And let's hand back to the team.
Thank you, Will. We look forward to seeing you next month for more personal finance news. Next up, Emma Waller is chatting to our special guest, Justine Piercy. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm delighted now to introduce Justine to this episode. And Justine is a really good friend, and she's a fantastic financial wellbeing consultant. She has over 25 years experience from the banking industry, working with one of our leading UK high street banks. And since 2019, Justine has dedicated lots of what she does to really supporting people with their financial well-being. And she talks about financial resilience, how to build it. She encourages people to share their experiences with money and she has expert knowledge in this area. So welcome, Justine. It's lovely for you to join us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me, Emma.
Oh, you're welcome. So we're going to start off by really taking a look at our money mindset. And money mindset has a really, really big impact on the way we manage money. And sometimes as consultants, we will have that conversation about money mindset. So essentially, how can our money mindset improve our financial well-being?
It's a really great question, and delving into the psychology of money is just fascinating. And for most people, we actually start to form our money mindset from as young as the age of 7, when we start to learn and listen and see and have influences around us. And it's that money mindset growing up and then going into adulthood that typically forms our relationship with money going forward. And if we haven't learned about money as part of growing up, and sadly we don't learn this stuff typically through our school and our education, then it's no doubt that people are picking up difficult issues, and therefore maybe finding themselves in a negative money mindset and don't know what to do or how to get out of it. And that forms our attitudes and our behaviors when it comes to what we do with what we've got. So really, in terms of top tips, is firstly understand, where did your relationship start with money and how did it start? And then if it's not a great relationship with money, don't sit in that space. Work through, talk to someone, put plans in place. We're going to talk about goals in a second, but I often say, a goal without a plan is just a wish. It's just a pipe dream. So actually putting some steps in place to change that mindset. And you can, you can train your brain to, move away from that negative mindset into a much more of a growth mindset. But it's not easy because we form those opinions and beliefs really early on. But not impossible.
And I think as well, we talk a lot about reframing, don't we? That whole thinking about money that little bit differently, and how that can really help us. But as you quite rightly say, it's not an easy, it's a really difficult challenge to actually, if you've been thinking about money in that way for so long, actually changing it can be difficult. Any tips on how we can get out of that sort of negative mindset?
So I think we all have skills, okay? We all have day-to-day skills, whether it's organizational skills, communication skills, whatever it might be that we're good at. Think about what are your strengths and then apply it to money. And I think with some people, it's about not knowing where to go. So do your research, okay? People say to me all the time, I'm never going to buy a house. I'm never going to get on the property ladder. And if you keep using that language, I'm never going to, or I'm rubbish with money, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So change the language, change the, I'm going to take some positive steps. I'm going to find out and do some research. I'm going to talk to a professional. I'm going to share my concerns with a family member or a friend. And I think the more we can open up that conversation and put some real practical steps in place is what I would say. But it's absolutely possible. We shouldn't dwell and kind of wallow in that negative mindset.
Yeah, thank you. Great response there. And you did mention there about talking, obviously you mentioned talking about young people and how we have that sort of mindset maybe from an early age. What's a number one tip for maybe a parent where perhaps you've not had a brilliant journey yourselves? What could you be doing with your children maybe?
Well, I think we see this a lot. There is what we call imposter syndrome, right? If you as a parent aren't great at managing money, then you're going to be more concerned about how that portrays to your children or your grandchildren. So actually, remember that we all can change our money mindset. And my top tip is just to start a conversation, right? Yeah. Kids are watching social media, following influencers on TikTok, they're more mindful of the news and the TV on in the background. So if you're not talking to them as a parent, then someone else will be. There'll be someone else on the playground, you get lunch break, telling you stuff. So just open the conversation, okay? It doesn't matter what your knowledge is or how good or bad you might be at managing money. Just start to. And pocket money. Pocket money is the most underutilized financial well-being tool there is out there for parents. And use it and encourage it, even if it's just shrapnel. It doesn't have to be lots of money, but pocket money.
Brilliant. And also, I guess once they start to have their own allowance, that really can start to encourage people to think about what you're going to do with it, how you're going to plan to use that well. And that really brings into sort of our next question, which is all around budgeting. And so from your point of view, what are those fundamental steps that we should be taking when we're creating our budgets, and how do we stick to it?
So my kind of top tips on this is to start small and keep it simple. Okay, there are a lot of spreadsheets and budgeting apps and bank accounts with pops. There's lots of great things out there, but if you've never done budgeting before, then that might feel a bit overwhelming and a bit daunting. So I would say I was taught right from an early age, good old-fashioned pen and paper, Emma. I was just, having a notebook where you write down, not just your normal bills, but also your spending, those little bits in there, the cup of coffee, the takeaway, all those bits and bobs. Because unless you actually start to write it down and see what you have, then you can't start to analyze it or cancel it or change it or swap it. And that is the fundamental starting point with budgeting. Keep it simple, write it down, and then start analysing. My other top tip on that would be to do it with someone else, either someone else in the household or someone external that can just cast their eye over it. And once you get into that baby steps habits, we're talking about budgeting is formulating a habit here, then we can start looking at how to proportion out our money and save up for things and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and from an educational point of view, actually going back, stripping it right back and pen and paper, we actually tend to remember things a little bit more when we're writing things down, and it sticks a little bit better with us. So again, if you're thinking about that, I think pen and paper to start with before you sort of launch into all those tools that are online is such a really good idea, isn't it?
And when it comes to budgeting, I think people think it's a lengthy task, it's going to take a long time. It doesn't, because actually in habit, it's actually, I'm just going to cast my eye over it, let's look back, what's coming up, and actually it doesn't have to be, really laborious. My other top tip would just be to make sure you've not just got the bills covered, but we also want to have a bit of fun as well.
Definitely.
Think about the future. So think about those three little bits.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you very much. Some great suggestions there around our budgeting. And even before we look at budgeting, we should always have those ideas. What's our money for? What do we want to do with it? And so how important do you think financial goals are in terms of our overall well-being?
Massively important. And often people I talk to often say to me, well, financial goals, that's for old people, right? That's for retirement. You're talking about long term, and I'm not. I'm talking about short term, medium term, and long term. And it might just be something short term, like having enough money to go out next weekend, or buy a new outfit to go out with friends. It doesn't have to be what does the next 40 years look like. So actually, break it down, short term, less than 5 years, medium term, maybe 5 to 10, and then long term. And I think if you've got half an eye on all three of those, massively important. I would also be writing down your goals. I would try and make them really visual as well. I still have my holiday picture on my fridge to remind me that's where I'm going in August and that I need to save up for it, and involve people around you as well so they understand what your goals are. But it comes back to that, a goal without a plan is just a wish.
Yeah and I guess in terms of your experience and because obviously you speak to people daily around all these different themes, what goals are you seeing at the moment? And have they changed over the past couple of years or so?
Yeah, they have. I think the goals at the moment are more short term. So just getting through the month, paying the bills. I think with the rising cost of living, actually a lot of people might not be able to save at the moment or think more long term, which is fine. So yeah, I do think it's, for a lot of people now, it's just getting through the month and making sure those bills are paid, or even using their money in a way to maybe repay debts or clear off credit cards, those kind of things. Yeah, I do think it evolves, but it doesn't mean that those long-term goals aren't still there. They might just be on pause for a minute or on hold in the meantime. So, and that happens, doesn't it, all throughout our lives. So we get setbacks, things happen that might, put a bit of a brick in the road that we might have to swerve. But it doesn't mean those goals have disappeared. It just might take a bit.
And also, I guess one thing that we often don't think about with financial goals is that we can change them. They are allowed to change, where they're not sort of set in stone, are they? And that we should be really judging, is this still realistic for me? Should I still be focusing on that? So again, I guess from somebody listening to this conversation, don't be shy, don't be scared to change those goals too.
And things happen, life gets in the way, doesn't it? Things happen unexpectedly. This is what we call financial resilience. It doesn't mean you don't still want that dream house in the country or, to be able to clear off all your debts. It just might, you just might have to swerve your way to the goal in a different way.
So what can we do then? Obviously, if our goals are going to change or something happens that we can't predict, or something that's completely out the blue that happens, how can we build that sort of resilience for those events, do you think?
Yeah, so we talk about financial resilience is something that a lot of people feel is impossible or they can't do. But financial resilience is basically having plans in place each month that we're perhaps putting away a little bit of money to help, rainy day funds, some people call it, or emergency funds. But it doesn't have to be a lot of money. It's just having a little bit of set aside, if you like, that can help us with those setbacks. So building that resilience into your everyday money management is absolutely crucial, because stuff happens. And the more you can build that resilience, the more likely you will still be on track with your other goals, because you've got something else over here that can help in the short term. It's not easy, Emma, at the moment, it feels as they are.
That's it.
People, I absolutely get that. But I do think, I'm a visual person, so having reminders and notifications and, visuals on my fridge, they keep the things that make me happy and my goals, alive. Even if
Yes. And we still should have them, even if we're finding things difficult, because it does give us, and if we can put into our budget something to treat the family or have that day out, then we should still continue to do that, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. And I know we're talking about financial well-being, but our emotional well-being, our mental health and well-being, and our social well-being is equally as important. So, we don't just work hard. We also want to make sure that we're enjoying life along the journey, as well as paying the bills, right?
Thank you. Yes, of course, it's really, really important, because obviously we want to, if we can, have certain amounts of our budget allocated to those things for that long-term, as you say, emotional well-being and that holistic approach as well, isn't it? So thank you very much for those responses there. There's some great ideas there along the way. Now I'm going to change the subject a little bit, because I know you have, in the work that you do, you have this method. Now I don't even know how to pronounce it. Power, is that right?
Power.
The power method. Justine, take us through what the power method is and what should we be thinking about?
Okay, so the power method, and it's deliberately spelled incorrect on purpose, so just kind of go with me. Okay, it's PAWA. Okay, and it's an acronym, so a good old acronym. And the P then is all about where you're at. So if you think about, if you were trying to improve your physical well-being, so let's say you wanted to get a bit fitter, you would probably, I don't know, take some measurements, jump on the scales, look at your diet, look at how much water you're drinking. You want to know what your starting point is so that you can measure your progress along the way, okay? And that's what the power method is. It's a way of kind of scoring your financial well-being now, doing it again in 6 months and 12 months and further down the line to see if you've improved. Right, so let me talk you through.
Mm-hmm.
The P stands for your personal money score, and it covers 5 areas of financial well-being. And what we do is ask people to score themselves out of 20 on 5 different areas. The first one is your understanding and confidence around money. So score yourself 0 to 20, somewhere on that scale, 20 being high, 0 being low. The second one is your relationship with money. So thinking back to what you learned growing up, what your beliefs are, how you feel now about money. And these, are just a snapshot in time. They change all the time. Third one is your ability to pay bills. So again, score yourself 0 to 20 at the moment. Then look at your financial resilience, which we just talked about. How would you bounce back from setbacks? Again, emergency funds, having money set aside. And then the last one is around your future plans. How good are you at achieving your future plans? And then all you do is score yourself out of 20, and then you've got a number out of 100 because there's 5 different areas. That's your starting point. That's where you're at with your financial well-being. Then what we do is suggest to people that they ought to just focus on one area, okay? Because the breadth of financial well-being is huge. So we talk about A for areas of focus. So it might be that you just need to get to grips with your basic money management and your debts. It might be that you'd want to buy a house at some point, so you want to do some research around the property ladder. It might be you want to talk about insurances and your family and wills, or it might be more longer term than that, even when it comes to pensions or planning for retirement. So again, just focus on one area of financial well-being that you want to get to grips with. That's the A. Then comes the W. So what do you need to do? What are your next steps? And it might be for some people research or guidance, talking to somebody, or it might be that you need more advice. You might need to speak to a qualified financial advisor or qualified mortgage broker. So once you've done that, the last bit then is the actual action. A is for action, which is just essentially saying, okay, I've done all of that now. Now what? And actually, when people start to put time in their diary, once a week, once a month, however frequent, it tends to improve. Do someone else. Share your areas of focus and your steps with a third party. That's going to hold you accountable, your accountability buddy. And actually, if you can apply those 4 PAWAs to your financial well-being and then score yourself in 6 months' time, your scores should have gone up if you have taken action on your areas of focus. And it's just a way of understanding, measuring and improving your own personal financial well-being, but also if you're a company or an employer, you might want to know where your employees are at. So from a data gathering perspective, it helps clients know their starting point, but also what other areas employees might be interested in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting way. So we've got this sort of baseline number, haven't we? Then we look at making some improvements, and then we reevaluate and see if we've got better at it. And again, if we have, it's that element, isn't it, that we can celebrate that, and we can really then use that information. Okay, that worked. Let's try something different next time.
Exactly. And it might be that next time, maybe you've worked on your budgeting and now you've got that down to a fine art. You now might want to focus on looking at your pension and understanding a bit more about that and doing some research and etc. So it's an ever evolving method, I guess, of looking out for your own financial well-being.
Moving on from that, in terms of people struggling at the moment, which again, in what we do, we're hearing lots of similar stories, and debt can be really overwhelming. So again, what top tips would you give to someone who maybe is struggling a little bit at the moment to try and manage or even reduce some of that debt? What would you say they could do, or what should they be looking at?
So I think the first step is to not be in denial and accept there's a problem, which in itself sounds easy but is difficult. So a lot of people struggling with debt think they're doing okay, but actually they're not scratching the surface, or they're paying high interest and APRs on stuff, and therefore the debt's not really going down. So I think the first step is to go back to your budgeting and to start to prioritise those debts, in particular the ones that you're paying the most APRs on. I think sometimes opening up that conversation would be my other top tip, whether it be with a partner or whether it be somewhere like Step Change, the UK's largest debt support charity. People that don't open up about debt are the ones that are going to spiral. So the sooner you do that, and there's no shame attached to it, there's no embarrassment, more and more people are using credit just to pay everyday bills. So actually getting on top of it, knowing where to go, and opening up the conversation. And actually there are things that you can do. So you can approach the banks for things like payment holidays, for example. You can approach the debt charities like Step Change. They've got debt counsellors that can help you budget, that can help you prioritise, that can give you breathing space to, make those payments, and can write them off in some instances as well. So I think that the danger is when people are in debt, they tend to either be in denial and therefore things just get worse, or they Google debt management and end up going to
in the wrong place,
which is the wrong place. That's going to end up charging them more money in the long run. So it's kind of knowing where to go.
Yes, and also what you said about the that they are completely independent, and they're not going to judge you, and they hear this all the time, don't they? They're used to dealing with these situations, and actually there's more options when you speak to a debt advisor, debt counsellor, that they can do on your behalf than you can do on your own sometimes.
And one thing I do like about Step Change as well is they have a 60-second debt test on their website. So if anyone's in any denial about whether they're in a debt situation or not, and they have a brilliant YouTube testimonials, real life stories, and stories often resonate with people. And I just think knowing that there are people out there going through the similar situation, there are people out there that have been through redundancy, that have been through marriage breakups, that have survived economic abuse, and actually listening to what they did and how they've, turned things around, I think is inspirational. So
and it's not giving up, and that there is a solution. There are things you can do, and it can be solved. It's going to take some work and some actions and a lot of talking, but it can be done, can't it?
It can, and no matter how long it takes either. I think some people think it's impossible because it's going to take forever, but it's that first step. If you don't take that first step, it's never going to change. So, be brave. There's no shame in it, and get the help and support you need.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And leading on from that, are there any tools or resources that you think are worthwhile looking at for someone maybe who wants to manage their money a little bit better? Any online things, any apps that you think are really good? What would you say?
Oh, there's loads. So whenever people ask me questions about budgeting apps, there are a lot of different budgeting apps out there. But I always signpost people to which.co.uk. You have their top 10 tried and tested budgeting apps. And there's a few out there that people will be familiar with, like Emma and Plum. Hyperjar is a great one if you want to portion control your money. A lot of people talk about Monzo Bank because of the pots. You can section money out for different things. But I think it's about, if you're going to use a budgeting app, my top tip would be to just pick one and have a go. And if that doesn't work, pick another one. Because I think it's more about ease of use. Some of them are open banking platforms, some of them aren't. So,
and what does that mean, Justine? What does that mean, that open banking?
Yeah, so the open banking basically means it's an app that can pull all your information from all your different bank accounts into one place. So rather than having to log on to your Halifax app and your NatWest app and your MasterCard app, actually it just brings it all together so you can see it really easily and helps proportion your money out. So so I think there isn't one in particular, but I think do your research is what I would say.
And trial, do a few, just see how they work, and there will be one you prefer using that meets yours and your family's needs maybe. Obviously, when we're looking to maintain our financial well-being, it is a continuous ongoing process, isn't it? So how can we stay motivated with this? Because it's not easy, because it means we've always got to be juggling things, looking for new ideas. So how can we stay motivated and really stay on track with our financial goals over time?
So budgeting is the one skill that's going to help us keep in control of today, but also keep our eye on our future goals as well. So if my one plea, to anyone that's listening would be have a go at budgeting, right? and use it not just to pay the bills, but use it to put money away for the future, whatever those goals might be. And if you can get into that habit, budgeting is the key to all money evils. You'll either live within it or you'll realize you can't afford it. It just is that one skill. That's the one thing, Emma, I wish that we taught in our schools through education. None of this bloody Pythagoras, quantum stuff. Let's just get back to good old budgeting, because that will keep you on track. And if you get into a habit of, looking at it once a month and remembering to, make those adjustments, then you won't go far wrong.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing those tips throughout today. And now it's time to hand back over to Hiram and Charlie.
Thank you so much for that, Emma and Justine. There were some great insights there. Now, for our final feature of the show, we're going to leave you with a couple of financial well-being tips that you can deploy this month. Charlie, what do you have for us for this?
Well, I've cheated. I've borrowed one from Adam Owen, our man from behind the scenes. He suggests having a look at how your income and expenditure is helping you achieve your goals. So he suggests creating a table with 3 columns titled Moving Towards Your Goals, Neutral, and Moving Away from Your Goals. And then you sort your expenditure into those 3 columns so you know whether or not that expenditure is helping you to achieve what you want. And that's my tip, or rather Adam's tips for this month. Hiram, what's yours?
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Charlie. That's a great tip, as always. So what's my tip for the month? Well, I'm going to stick to the theme that we had in today's show, which was around getting to know more around your money. Now, I know it can be daunting when we come to think about money and what do all the terminologies and various sort of elements of it are. So I thought the good place to start would be the free resources that are available to the consumers. And the website I'm going to direct you to is called Money Helper. It was launched in June 2021, and it's a consumer-facing service which offers free and impartial money and pensions guidance. It brings together the support and services of 3 former government-backed financial guidance providers. That's Money Advice Service, the Pensions Advisory Service, and the Pensions Wise. So I believe this will be a good place to start to get to know a little bit more about how money works in your day-to-day life and planning for the future.
That's a great tip, Hiram. And that is the end of the show. I'd like to thank Will for bringing us the news and Emma and Justine for a great interview.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, we will be back next month with more great guests and practical financial well-being tips. So we'll see you then. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.